I wrote a 20-page paper this week on moral imagination, and I thought I would just bring it and read it to you. Because after turning that in, I sat down to write a talk. But one of the things I was writing about in that paper on moral imagination, and we will talk about that one of these days, but I was remembering back to when Black Lives Matter got really big, and how that seemed like such an obvious statement of something that needed attention to some of us. And to some of us, that seemed like a disrespectful statement that was disavowing the importance of all of the other groups. And I was thinking about the controversy of that. And I was remembering one thing I saw at that time, and it was a post by the woman who at the time was the president of the Breast Cancer Association. And she said, we wear are they the pink ribbons for breast cancer? She said, we wear our pink ribbons in October to honor Breast Cancer Month, not because all of the other cancers don't also need to be healed, but because sometimes we need to look at places that are hurting and we need to acknowledge that group. And she said the same is true of Black Lives Matter. It's not that there aren't other hurting groups in the world. It's that sometimes it is incumbent upon us as a community to shine a light in certain areas so that they don't get lost. And I was thinking, at that same time, this was around 2016, and at that same time, I remember having a conversation here in this community about whether we still needed to celebrate Pride Month. And I remember thinking, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. And little did I know 8 years later that we would have slid back. I never would have dreamed. And so today, on the second Sunday of Pride Month, I celebrate Pride. I celebrate with you as an ally, as a protector, as a teacher, all of the things that I am. As a mom, I just want you to know, if you are in the group of LGBTQIA 2S+, I think I got all the letters. I'm still working on it. I just want you to know, I celebrate you. I celebrate your life. I celebrate your life today. And happy Pride, my loves. Happy Pride. I just want you to know that. Look at all that love and support you have in this community. You too. You have all of that love and support, those of you online. Last week, Reverend Shannon kicked off Pride Month with a beautiful talk called We Are the Ones. We are the ones. And she said, we are the ones to come together to do the holy and sacred work of mending. The holy and sacred work of mending. I was so grateful for this beautiful idea when I heard it on Sunday. Last weekend, as many of you know, I got to have a short visit with our beautiful community of NTCSL Colorado. Hello, beloveds. It is so good to be in the same room with you. It was a joy and a blessing to be with you. I had a marvelous weekend. I will just tell you, this is a inspired and inspiring group of individuals that I got to be with. Hello, darling. How did I not see that you were here? Oh, it's so good to see you. So I was in Colorado last weekend, and on the Saturday, 2 of our practitioners in Colorado picked me up, and we went to visit Red Rocks, which was the coolest amphitheater of all time, new bucket list to see Brandi Carlile there because she plays there every year. Like, it will happen, Faith. Don't laugh at me. And then we went and had a beautiful brunch, and then we went up the street to the Columbine Memorial. That was tough. That was tough. Do you remember where you were when Columbine happened? Mm-hmm. I was alone with my infant son, who is now running our video production department. I was making dinner when I turned on the news. I go to bed at 8, so dinner happens at 4. I don't apologize for that. I turned on the news and I saw what was happening, and I remember turning off the stove and picking up my infant and sitting on the floor in horror and just crying and rocking my kid. It was awful. So as I was listening to Reverend Shannon's talk last week, I was thinking about how that rent the fabric of our psyche as a nation. And then I was thinking about some of the other things that have done the same thing. Sandy Hook, 9/11, I could go on. And then for Reverend Shannon to so boldly claim that we are the menders. After being at Columbine, the memorial, by the way, is on the hill above the high school. So I just had an opportunity to just stand and pray and bear witness again to that rent in our fabric, that tearing, you know? And I was so, the moment that Reverend Shannon said, we are here to do the sacred work of mending, something in me that I think was hope was born. Something in me that was a little cracked to let a light in of something that had armored over, that had scarred over for far too long, opened up. We're here to do the sacred work of mending. Walking through that memorial, which is one of the most beautiful memorials I have ever seen, it was heart-rending, but it was also healing. And I realized that we don't get to sit around and wait for somebody else to show up with the needle and the thread. We get to work because it's our work, it's our duty, our sacred duty to mend. And I'm starting to realize that when the mending happens, it leaves a seam, it leaves a scar, and the fabric is changed, isn't it? It can't go back. It will never be like it was before. But I started to wonder, can we incorporate all of that to make it better? That's what made me think of asking Brian to sing Rainbow this morning. When it rains, it pours, but you didn't even notice that it ain't raining anymore because it's hard to breathe when all you know is the struggle of staying above the rising water line. That's how that song opens. And she goes on to say, but the sky is finally opened and the rain and wind have stopped blowing, but somehow you are stuck in that same storm. And isn't that what we do? We hunker down under our umbrellas waiting for the storm to pass, and we're so hunkered down that we don't notice that the storm has passed. So we hold tight to our umbrella, and she says, well, darling, I'm just trying to tell you that there's always been a rainbow hanging over your head. And for some of us, that song is a simple statement of truth. We recognize that our attitudes and our beliefs about life, they affect everything, and that when we can only see the clouds, it's because we have lost perspective of the recognition that the sunlight, the grace, the love, the peace, the abundance, it has been there all along, but we have put a cloud of limiting belief between us and it. And that we recognize that we have the power at any moment by changing our thinking to let down our guard, to let down the umbrella, and to acknowledge the good that is there, the rainbow that is right there. For some of us, simple. But for some of us, that song is a visionary statement of what is to come. It is not something that we're experiencing right now. For some in the LGBTQIA2 plus community, they are out and proud, and they have supportive families and communities and politicians and jobs, and we celebrate that. And that's not true of the entire group. There can never be one truth for an entire group. And so for some people, it's not safe to put the umbrella away yet. There still needs to be a level of protection because it's still raining in the conditions of their life, and they're afraid of drowning, just trying to keep their head above water. The paradox here is that both experiences are true and right and valid. But what's at the core of it all, the divine nature of truth at the center of it all, that doesn't change. No matter what our outer experience is, there is a core truth of us that doesn't change, that cannot change, that has never changed. So how do we, spiritual practitioners that we are, because all of us are practicing, how do we navigate the seeming dichotomy of knowing the truth of the wholeness and the grace and the power of the divine, while also acknowledging that there are great tears in the fabric of our being right now? When we speak of a spiritual truth, we're talking about a timeless principle of wholeness. Some call it God. I call it love. Annie Lamott calls it Gus sometimes. It doesn't matter what name you give it. The important thing is to recognize that it is infinite and that it's within you. It is, in fact, the highest truth of you. It is the part of you that is divine wisdom, the part of you that speaks with the still small voice, the part of you that sees the experience you're having and can take the 40,000-foot view and see how it might somehow, sometime serve you or the world. This is what we're talking about when we say that there's a part of you that cannot be harmed. There is a part of you that does not know lack or separation or disease. This is the part of you. Now, this part of you, what I like to call the blueprint of your soul, it's your divine nature, and it's not out there somewhere. It's right here in you. And we talk about this all the time. We talk about how that inner perfection is constantly working to bring your life, your circumstances, your relationships, your finances, your creative life, all of it, just bringing it back into alignment with the wholeness that it is, with the love that it is, with the essential nature of itself that is wholeness and love and peace and good with a capital G, you know? Ernest Holmes described it like this. He said, no limit can be placed on the human spirit. It merges with the universal spirit, for the two are really one. God is in us as we are in God, the same essence, the degree apparently different. The one finite, the other infinite. And since the infinite can't come from the finite, it follows that the finite must come from the infinite. It's a little circle within the big circle. The little circle within the big circle. Same essence, different degrees. You, finite. Me, finite. I have a beginning and an end. The universe, infinite. The divine, infinite. You, love. God, loving kindness. you, divine, God, divinity itself. You see, all the same stuff, one finite, one infinite. You're the little circle within the great circle of the divine. Now, sometimes we forget. Sometimes you forget that you're just so divinely perfect. And every Sunday, every class, every conversation, we talk about the tools that we can use to remember. Reverend Shannon keeps handing us these tools week after week, these tools for personal transformation, these tools for global transformation. And we use them and our lives change. And then we forget, or we get distracted, or we get bored. And we stop using our tools, and then life gets lifey again. And sometimes we forget that beautiful truths of ourselves so completely that we need to lean on each other to remember for us. Sometimes it's easier for me to see the divine truth of you than to see it in myself. And that's why we have community. That's why we have practitioners. You can pray with a practitioner and remember, oh yeah, I'm not powerless. I'm a circle in the divinity of infinite power. I am one with love. Of course I can do something here. You see, a practitioner's job is to see beyond the conditions to the sacred truth beyond the conditions. And what we do, you might be saying, Shelley, why are we talking about this? Because this is so important. What we do when we look beyond the circumstances to the truth, the spiritual truth behind them, that blueprint of truth behind the conditions, you see, then we call that forward. And your life begins to change based on the new understanding of who you are. This is what we do. This is what we do for ourselves. This is what we do for each other. We look beyond conditions to the ultimate truth, and we call that truth forward to hold sway in your life. This is what we do for each other. So when there's pain in your body, we look beyond the pain and we call forth the ultimate truth of your wholeness. When there's pain in your heart, we sit with you in the pain until you're ready to look beyond it and to uncover the ultimate love that lives in you. When there's pain in your finances and your relationships, when you feel stuck in life, when you're scared, we look beyond all of that and we bring forward your brilliance and your power. You, finite, the divine, infinite. You with me so far? Okay. What if the same thing is true of the world? Oh boy, they said. Let's just think about America for a minute. What if the same thing is true of our country? What if there's a divine blueprint of perfection at the soul of our nation, and we get to look beyond the circumstances and call forward a greater yet to be, call forward a greater love, a greater equality, a greater justice for all beings? What if the truth is already there? And we don't have to excavate it, we don't have to explain it, we don't have to convince it to do anything, because the truth of love is already there. We just have to know it. I don't know about you, but I am really triggered by politics right now. It's not just me, so that's good to know. And I keep investing in my fear. I keep investing in my righteous anger. I keep investing in the story of the brokenness. And I'm starting to wonder if that is serving. Because when I'm invested in the story of the brokenness, the thing that I am putting out, that returns to me multiplied is broken. But here's the thing, I'm not broken. And so I don't jive with this broken country of ours. It doesn't feel right to me. And it suddenly occurred to me, listening to Reverend Shannon tell us that we are the menders, it suddenly occurred to me, duh, out of the blue, where God lives, right? That maybe I'm seeing it wrong. Maybe my job is to look beyond the brokenness and call forward the love, just like I do in my own life, just like I do with my friends and my family, just like I do with my students, just like I do with you. What if there's a perfection in the soul of our country and we can call it forth? What would that look like? What would that look like? I think that first, we have to use our moral imagination. See, there it came again. We will talk about that someday. I think we have to use our moral imagination to even envision what that could possibly look like. Because when you turn on your TV, you know, the news is the news because the things that go on the news are unusual. They're not the way it's supposed to be. That's what makes it news. Did you know that? The news isn't the story of what's true. The news is the anomalies of what needs attention. I think it's incumbent on us as spiritual practitioners to really look at the soul of our country and envision it coming forward. I strongly suggest we do this before the next election. Because what happens is, as we call that perfection forward, the circumstances of life change. As we focus on the small circle of truth, the infinite power of the divine empowers it to come forward. What if we're going about it backwards? What if? What if? I envision our country as a place where people can show up undefended. I knew darn well when I asked Brian to sing Rainbow that some of us are still in the storm and it's not safe for everybody, right? But here at NTCSL, we have a vision of a community where you can show up undefended. We have a vision for you online that you can show up undefended and be reminded of your truth and your grace, your wholeness, your circle of completeness. What if we hold that same vision for the greater community? What if we hold a vision for America that we can show up undefended? And I can hear some of you saying, oh, now that's a long way off. This is our chance to look beyond the circumstances, to see what is true and what is possible, and to call it forward. What does that look like? What does that look like? I have a tool. I have a three-step process, because I love a three-step process. Are you here for it? Okay. Step one. When you want to criticize. What? Why are we starting there, Shelley? What do you mean? Don't you mean when I'm feeling hurt, or like my feelers got hurt, or no? Because what happens is when we feel attacked, we immediately go to criticize the attacker. Some of us in this society that we're living in today are feeling a little attacked. And so we automatically go to criticize the thing that we are feeling attacked by. So watch yourself for criticism. Criticism. When you want to criticize, whether that's a person standing in front of you or a person on the screen, a person on the news, somebody who's removed from you, first, look at the condition that's being perpetrated. Look at it. Look at it. Watch what happens as your feelings arise and be with them. Oh, I'm feeling angry. Oh, I feel despair. Oh, I'm really afraid. I'm afraid for my daughters. Whatever it is, just allow it to come up. Look at it. Don't avoid your feelings because they're telling you something about what you believe about life and what you believe about where power is. So look at them. But also, don't start catastrophizing and turning them into something they're not. Pat knows exactly what I'm talking about. I know, you're not alone, my love. You're not alone. Because what we tend to do as human beings, and God bless us, aren't we just dramatic sometimes? Sometimes we will latch on to one of those feelings and then we'll blow it up. And in the process, blow up some relationships too. That's personal experience talking, right? Don't catastrophize it. Just let it be what it is. Whatever your feelings are, that's enough. You don't need to make them bigger. You don't need to make them smaller. They're perfect just the way they are. I was remembering how in the Amen Effect, Rabbi Sharon Brous talked about when she was in conflict with somebody, she would actually imagine that there was a screen between them, and she would imagine the story projected on this screen. So then she could watch it like a movie and be one step removed from it and watch her own reaction to it. I thought that was a really cool technique. So just watch it. Watch what's going on in you, watch what's going on outside of you. Just watch it when you start to feel critical. Number 2, then, just for a minute, and this takes practice, I'll admit. I bet if you try really hard, you can look beyond the condition to the truth. When I'm able to do that, say it's an individual I'm in conflict with or imaginary conflict with on the television, often I see a scared little human that is afraid they're losing their power, so they're trying to take mine. And that's not how it works. They don't get to do that. But when I can see beyond the circumstance to the spiritual truth, then I can even see beyond the scared human. And sometimes I can see that divine blueprint of their soul. And recognizing that they're on a soul journey just like I am on a soul journey. And I might not agree with their choices, but there is still love at the core of them somewhere too. Now, what do I do with that? I'll tell you what I do with that. Only once I have managed to find the truth, only then do I ask, what is mine to do? What is mine to do here? What would love do here? What would love say here? What is mine to do? But you can only do that if you have looked at the situation with clear eyes, when you have looked beyond the situation for the spiritual truth, then the way forward makes itself known. It makes itself known. A divine path opens before your feet. You know what to do. You know what to say. It's important to acknowledge at this juncture that sometimes, especially for those of us who are experiencing like life-changing circumstances that bring life-changing grief, sometimes there isn't anything to be done. But you can always love and love and love again. And make sure you share some of that love with yourself while you're at it. But most of the time, there is something that can be done. I'm going to give you a real brief example. So the Supreme Court is about to do a great big ruling dump this week, and I'm afraid. I'll let you know. I have some fear about some of the rulings that are going to be made this week. So based on our 3-step process, here's what I'm going to do. When the rulings come down, I'm going to watch. I'm going to be present. I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to see what the conditions actually are, and I'm going to see what my feelings actually are. I'm not going to try and minimize my feelings. I'm also not going to try and blow them up. They're just going to be what they are. Then, once I've been able to clearly see the situation, then I'm going to look beyond the situation to the beautiful soul of America, the truth that is underneath this blessed country. And I'm going to look into that soul of America for a kernel of divine truth. And I'm going to look until I find it. And once I do find it, then I'm going to call that forth into my consciousness. And once I have centered my mind in truth, then I will ask, what is mine to do here? What is mine to do here? Where does my energy need to go? Where does my money need to go? Where does my attention need to go? You know, it is free to email your senator. There is always something we can do. We can write the postcard. We can email the person who might be able to do something about it. We can gather with groups of people and decide together how we're going to encourage the holy soul of America to come forward. There is always something we can do. We are not powerless because we are the small circle within the great circle of the divine. The divine power has its way in the world through us and as us. We don't need to give anybody our power. We can use our power to serve the people who need to be served. No matter where we find ourselves, no matter what we're facing, whether it's personal or political, whether it's micro or macro, the most important thing we can do this week is remember our true nature and look for it in each other. Look for it in the hard places, and definitely look for it in the easy places, because when we're centered in that circle of empowerment and grace and love, when we're centered there, we're companioned by infinite power. So look at the condition and feel your feelings. Look for the truth beyond the condition and take the courageous steps from the place of understanding your power, your grace, the divinity that you are, because we are the menders. And in order to mend something, we have to have a vision of its potential and what it can be. We're the difference makers, and we're the ones who embrace the truth. Understanding, as the great Martin Luther King Jr. taught us, that love will have the final word in our lives and with each other.